Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Boris Tizengauzen with you. Today is September 25th. There's a lot of interesting news in this episode. The Astrakhan gas giant is on fire, the plant has been shut down, and evacuation is underway. Last night, Ukrainian drones struck key targets on the territory of the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, unidentified drones were spotted over airports in Denmark and Norway. What kind of hybrid attack is this, and who is behind it? Well, it turns out Russia is involved here too. There will be some interesting details in the episode. China has been caught cooperating militarily with Russia. Well, that's an open secret. And now Orban is having a meltdown in Hungary. And Medvedev is threatening the whole world, including the US, with a super bomb. There will be a lot of interesting things about this and more in today's episode. So if you're new to the channel, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And as usual, we'll start, yes, as is now tradition, with sanctions from the Magyars in the original language. The Astrakhan gas processing plant, with a capacity of 12 billion cubic meters per year and one of the largest in the world, was attacked by drones. Locals heard about 15 explosions. There are 5,600 people working at that plant alone. So, Madhya writes that during the night, the birds of the 14th Regiment of Unmanned Systems paid a visit. All in all, they hit the target quite well. This plant produced 66% of the country's sulfur. Let me remind you, sulfur is essential for explosives. The production of motor fuel has been halted. Meanwhile, the St. Petersburg Commodity Exchange resumed trading wholesale batches from this Astrakhan gas processing plant starting Monday. In other words, this indirectly suggests that they did indeed shut down this massive plant. And as for resuming operations, due to the complexity of the equipment that was destroyed, restarting work may only be possible in several weeks or even months. And yes, local social media groups are reporting a complete evacuation of the staff. Let me remind you, this plant is located not far from the Caspian Sea, at a distance of 1,675 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. A very serious hit, a very large facility. The governor of the Astrakhan region, Babushkin, showed up and stated, "Everything is actually fine. When the debris fell, there were some local fires which were quickly extinguished." I'm telling you, the debris from Ukrainian drones is just like ancient artifacts. In other words, a single piece of debris can shut down a giant factory, if necessary, that is. Meanwhile, the fuel crisis is spreading to more and more regions of Russia, including the occupied territories. And there, in the occupied territories, those two, let's call them Biba and Boba, Aksyonov and Konstantinov, are coming up with new reasons why there's no gasoline in occupied Crimea and decided to explain it to the deep people. Aksyonov came out and declared that the lack of gasoline is due, attention, to reduced production volumes at the oil refineries. So why do you think these volumes have decreased at the refineries? Why bother with the details? Why make things so complicated? They could have just said, there's no fuel because less is being delivered to the gas stations. That's it. That's the reason. No need to say anything about the refineries. There's no gasoline because it's not being brought to the gas stations. What's so hard to understand? Well, the main reason was mentioned a bit earlier. Sanctions from Hungary, sanctions from the SPU, sanctions from the GWA, sanctions from the drone forces, and that's not even all. You know, I didn't even bother to find the right words here. The scum finally got what was coming. That's the best headline for this news. A Russian Su-34 was shot down around 4 in the morning today in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Why? Because that's the very same Su that was dropping bombs on Zaporizhzhia and elsewhere. So that filth finally met its end. And there's more. That's not all, there's more. Once again, the primaries, GUR units, and the ghosts continue to terrorize the Russians. They burned 2 Russian transport planes, AN-26s, and coastal radar stations in Crimea. Honestly, these Ukrainian primaries are just absolutely awesome. Earlier this very week, in a single, highly effective operation, they successfully burned 3 Russian military helicopters, then completely destroyed 2 B-12 amphibious aircraft and yet another Russian Mi-8 transport helicopter. And now they are currently burning 2 more significant military transport planes, adding to their impressive tally of destroyed enemy assets. Honestly, I don't even know, they're just amazing. These military transport planes got what was coming to them at the Kacha airfield. I've been there many times. That's where the 318th Mixed Aviation Regiment of the Air Force and Air Defense of the Black Sea Fleet is based. According to 2022 data, it included 8 and 26 military transport aircraft. Now 2 of them are gone. By the way, maybe the rest have already been hit before, or more might have arrived there earlier. Oh, and they had 5 amphibious aircraft. 2 of those are gone too. And 4 Mi-8 helicopters. All 4 of those military aircraft are completely gone. So a very big, fiery hello to my beautiful native Crimea, a place I hold dear. By the way, there used to be gorgeous wild beaches there. Now, instead of wild beaches, the wild ones themselves have settled in and, well, they're getting their gifts. Let me remind you, friends, we continue to collect for the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade. The commanders from the 3rd Assault Brigade have recorded a message for us. Please take a look.
Greetings, friends. My call sign is Taubat. I am the commander of the Pomsta crew of the 3rd Assault Brigade FPV Strike Company. I'm addressing the viewers of Boris Tizengauzen's channel with a request to help collect funds for Matrice 30 drones.
These are large quadcopters and we need them for reconnaissance. They also perform some other very interesting functions. The fundraising goal is large, 1,100,000 hryvnias. We are counting on your support, on your help. Thanks to them, we will be able to destroy the enemy even more effectively and bring Ukraine's victory closer.
Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.
Let's help our warriors from the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There you'll find the details for Mono, Privat and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to you. And drones in the hands of our skilled warriors from the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade mean guaranteed annihilation of all the scum that came to our land. Let's support them. And now, more news from this week. It was a very eventful week. Call sign, Pastor. Ivan. Remember, we were raising money for his car, helping to close the fundraiser? He successfully received a brand new car, and here he is now, absolutely happy and genuinely smiling broadly in front of it.
Good afternoon. I'm very grateful to Boris and his subscribers for making it possible to get such a wonderful car. Thank you very much.
And I'm very happy for Ivan. And a huge thank you to him and his comrades who are defending our country. I passed on everyone's gratitude to him. I spoke with him today. May the car serve him well, and may they all return home alive and healthy to their families and loved ones. And just a couple of days ago, we loaded up the ATVs for the separate presidential brigade named after Hetman Bohdan Khmelnytsky, for which we also completed the fundraising. Here they are, looking great. The equipment has already been sent to our soldiers and is fully carrying out its tasks. By the way, when I was texting with Ivan today, Pastor, that's both his call sign and he's also a real pastor of an actual church. He's just, well, a titan. He says, I'll recover a bit, get my health back, and after my 9th concussion, I'll be back in action. I mean, I listen to him. He's like a person made from some kind of cosmic alloy. It's people like him that Ukraine relies on. And yesterday, the medics also touched me deeply. They recorded a video. A huge thank you to everyone who helped close the fundraiser for our medics, to everyone who supports our warriors. Here's the video.
In the combat zone, there are no hospitals or opportunities to work in medical facilities. That's why military medicine is not just about surgeries, but also constant construction, repairs, and preparing facilities. And it's also about a huge amount of consumables used during surgeries and medical procedures. All of this requires a lot of resources, and constantly, because our work doesn't stop for a single day. Thank you to Boris Tizengauzen for his ongoing support of the separate medical battalion and his special attention to frontline medicine. It's impossible to overstate the importance of this help right now, because it literally saves lives. I also want to thank the viewers of Boris's channel for their concern and support of our unit. And the speed with which you respond to our requests inspires us to work even harder.
I tell them, no, it's us who should thank you. We are indebted to you for saving the lives of our defenders and risking your own. Our combat medics are true guardian angels. Every time I receive videos like this or just words of gratitude, it feels like a special connection forms between us. I don't know. When you see real people whom you're helping, when you realize that your help has saved someone's life, I think that's incredibly important. That's why I always want to say a huge thank you to all of you, my friends, for taking part in the fundraisers, for helping and supporting our Ukraine and our defenders. You are simply the best. And now to the news. Denmark has declared a hybrid attack after drones appeared over airports. So, the Danish government, after seeing unidentified drones flying persistently over various airports at night, first of all, immediately closed the affected airports. And according to the official Danish side, these persistent drone flights over Danish airports clearly indicate that there is indeed some professional player operating behind them. Wow, you guys are like Hercule Poirot over there, seriously. The first incident happened on September 22nd in Copenhagen. At that time, the airport was closed for departures and arrivals for almost 4 hours. Well, just last night, drones appeared again over 4 of the country's airports. They left, the unidentified devices, I'm quoting here, left the area on their own, after which air traffic was restored. Danish authorities have not yet disclosed who might be behind these attacks, but they emphasize that these are not random flights. Law enforcement agencies are treating these incidents as part of a possible operation aimed at destabilizing the country. Who could have done this, huh? Who could be behind this? And today, information has been published that 2 vessels, the Sea Maverick and the Pushpa, that's the name of the ship, which belong to the Russian Shadow Fleet, are located 120 kilometers east of the iceberg, where drones were previously detected. And one of the television agencies reports that one of these vessels is suspected of launching drones. Wow. By the way, this week an airport in Norway was also closed for the same reason. So, look, the Russian Shadow Fleet, which could easily be completely blocked in the Danish straits, is not only passing through but also launching drones from these straits and terrorizing Danish airports. We've really hit rock bottom, just hit rock bottom. By the way, Danish police refused to comment on Vladimir Zelensky's post in which he wrote that Russia is behind the violation of Denmark's airspace. Quoting the head of police, "I can't say anything about this, not because I don't want to, but simply because I just don't know." And in Sweden too, unidentified drones have been spotted. On Monday evening in Malmö, let me remind you, this was at the beginning of this week, several people contacted the police after seeing a large unidentified drone in the sky over the city. So now, unknown drones are terrorizing 3 countries already. Let's try to solve this tricky puzzle, a real brain teaser, like one of those starred problems from the Scandinavian collection. Are there any old-timers here who remember Scandinavia? Russia is involved in a whole range of sub-threshold hybrid activities in Europe. For example, cyber attacks and parcel arson. There are already investigations underway, suspects have been identified and so on, as well as many other mischiefs. Not so long ago, 24 Russian drones flew into Poland. Naturally, there was no strong response. Well, there really wasn't any tough reaction. There were just statements. I would even say, on the contrary, after those 20 drones entered, Macron comes out and for some reason declares that Russian assets must not be touched. Otherwise, it will undermine the reputation of financial institutions and violate international law. Yeah. Poland closed its border with Belarus. I thought, wow, now they've really created a significant problem for China and Russia. But today, on September 25th, that border will be reopened. Quite a surprise. Also, let me remind you, 3 Russian planes violated Estonian airspace, which is a NATO country. So there have been a few proper statements, fairly tough ones, saying that now Russian aerial targets will be shot down, and now we are right at the Rubicon. Meaning, if the next aerial target isn't shot down, then it's all just talk, and Russia will just keep going. Even more planes will violate the airspace, they'll fly even deeper until someone turns around and finds troops already on their territory. That's why Putin will be stopped where he gets punched in the face, let's be honest. By the way, I'm curious, what are these drones circling over those Scandinavian airports? I mean, they're just impossible to catch. They showed up, and are people afraid to touch them or what? I don't get it. Are they copters, reconnaissance drones? What are they anyway? Well, shoot at least one down. Where are those much-touted lasers, the ones they were supposedly going to use for Star Wars or something? And the most interesting thing is, where are these drones being controlled from? Who is launching them? I mean, if they're being launched from the Russian Shadow Fleet, that's it. That's a reason to just completely shut down the Danish straits, that's all. By the way, here's a great suggestion for our European colleagues. If you can't shoot them down yourselves, well, it happens, let us send you a few mobile teams from Ukraine in exchange for long-range missiles. And with your missiles, we'll hit Russian factories. And then there will be no factories, no drones, and nothing will be flying toward you anymore. And our people will help you shoot down those drones over there. You'll figure it out, see who's launching them, and from where. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. The channel is called Calm Analytics. As they say, the channel is calm and entertaining. Watch it, and you'll be reasonable and attractive. And well, I know you're already reasonable and attractive, but there's always room for improvement. And you know, I recently came across a video from some Russian gathering where a woman is singing a song by Vysotsky. And you know, he has this song, "It so happened the men left, abandoning the crops before their time." Well, those who are older probably know it. And the meaning is clear. It's from about the second. It's one of the songs about World War II. Vysotsky actually had a whole series of these songs about how men abandoned their crops and went off to fight to defend their land. But do you know what they're doing now? They're singing these songs now in the context of the war they've started against Ukraine. So they've dug up songs about that war, World War II, and they're singing them as if, well, it just happened that the men left. But who, you idiots, even invited you here to Ukraine? The song is about the war when Nazi Germany attacked and people went off to defend their land. Now you are Nazi Germany. That is, Putin's Nazi state fascist thugs. You did exactly the same thing now. Why did I, well, pay attention to this? Because I listened to these songs as a child. My father loved Vysotsky. He had all the albums, the records. I remember them all very well. And yes, what's more, this lady sings, "It just happened, the men left." And in the audience, they show these so-called SMO soldiers, half-baked with glassy eyes and these kind of idiotic smiles wandering across their faces. So they think they're the defenders of the motherland. What crops did you leave unharvested before their time? They went off to kill in a foreign country. And by the way, let me remind you, they're still stealing Ukrainian grain. That's about the crops they abandoned. Instead of, I don't know, picking up some tools, fixing up their crooked huts, or building themselves some roads, they went off to someone else's country. They're just like locusts, really, sitting and waiting for the crops to grow and ripen, and then they swoop in. That's exactly how it is. By the way, in this series of war songs by Vysotsky, there's another one, I've mentioned it before, called Soldiers of Army Group Center. I think that's what it's called. For some reason, they don't perform it at their concerts, because you know there are lines about Wehrmacht soldiers, like this. Across the scorched plain, meter by meter, the soldiers of Army Group Center march through Ukraine. And then, ahead of us, everything is blooming. Behind us, everything is burning. No need to think, with us is the one who will decide everything for us. So why don't you sing this song, huh? It's as if it was written about Russian occupiers today. They even have a center group too. And ahead of them, everything is blooming. Behind them, everything is burning. And with their filthy boots, they trample our land, at least for now. So now I understand what they always mean when they say, "We can do it again." So apparently they want to repeat exactly what Hitler and his Wehrmacht soldiers did. These soldiers of the center group, and not only them. Well, I hope that the 1.5-meter tall Führer will meet the same end in a bunker. And after Putin decided to raise taxes for Russians, by the way, just so you understand. Before this, at some economic forum in the Far East, Putin said, "We can't raise taxes, we need to look for other resources." And then he says, "Raise the VAT." So after that, after he raised taxes, Peskov came out and said that Russians are ready for additional financial burdens, that they understand everything, and that they adore and love Putin, have rallied around him, and are ready to pay and endure. Well, the fact that they're ready to endure, that's obvious. The most interesting thing is that's actually true. Those fans of the Russian world, they'll spend their whole lives walking around without teeth, or with half their teeth, with that kind of picket fence smile, fighting over expired food near garbage bins. But they'll praise Putin to the skies, because in their opinion, he lifted Russia off its knees, even though with proper management, over these more than 20 years, they could have already had pensions of $3,000, if not more. Well, if the country had been managed properly, old age would be dignified. But they don't need a dignified old age, you see? That's when I realized that they don't want to live in anything good, beautiful, or comfortable. They need there to be a hole in the outhouse. That's a must. That's how it has to be. They've never lived well, so there's no point in starting now. And they won't let you either. That's it. That's the locusts. European intelligence agencies have accused Chinese companies of helping Russia in the creation of combat drones. In general, this is already a really serious investigation. Chinese drone experts have flown to Russia. They visited the Kupol military factory more than once. Reuters reports, and since the second quarter of 2024, they've been visiting this Kupol regularly. Kupol received Chinese drones, AS-60, ASTO, ASTO-140, a 900, a 200, in short, from the Chinese company Sichuan AII. Well, there are documents to prove it, basically, yes. Well, maybe it's too soon to open the Belarusian border for Chinese transit. And who are they for? Well, it's obvious. It's an open secret that China helps Russia with everything. Who do you think they built the largest terminal in Russia, in Alabuga, for? I've talked about it before. It's called the largest terminal. It's called the Deng Xiaoping terminal in Russia, near the drone manufacturing plant in Alabuga, and they hope to expand it. So what exactly are they going to be transporting through this largest terminal? What do you think? Some Chinese down jackets, maybe? I highly doubt it. And here's another indicator that things aren't going so well for Putin. Hungary has once again declared the threat of a third world war. Foreign Minister Szijjártó said that as long as Russia and the US maintain high-level contacts, there is a chance to avoid the worst-case scenario, the start of World War III. I've noticed an interesting pattern here. The closer the ties with Russia, the more they talk about World War III. Orban is constantly going on about this Third World War, all the time. This is one of Putin's objectives, to keep scaring people with World War III so that aid to Ukraine stops. Just a couple of days ago, Putin showed up from somewhere, and it's clear that things on the front are not going well for him at all. The much-touted offensive has actually failed. So he started threatening with nuclear weapons. Remember that statement. We are ready to use. Whenever things are going badly for him, notice how all these pterodactyls of the world, all these crows like Orban, start cawing with their crow voices about World War III. Accept Putin's terms. There will be no war. That's it. Just stop helping Ukraine and so on. For them, the scariest thing is to hear that the alliance is ready for any scenario, is prepared for war, and will respond harshly. That is what frightens them the most. And if someone comes out and says, so if anyone in the Kremlin makes a move, the Botox jellyfish will be vaporized into atoms. That's it. We have the means to do it. That's why in the previous episode I said that Hungary would refuse even Trump himself if he asked or demanded that they stop buying Russian oil and gas. And that's really not a good look. Well, I mean, they were forced to do it. I think the Orban government would never have made such a statement of its own accord. Just yesterday, I was literally talking with my American colleagues and asked them to pay attention to this statement from representatives of the Republican camp. There are different methods for treating dependencies. And here we're dealing specifically with oil dependency, and it seems to me that once again we come to the conclusion that the most effective sanctions are those very sanctions imposed by the armed forces of Ukraine against Russian oil pipelines. So even if Hungary refuses Trump, or doesn't refuse, stops buying oil, or doesn't stop, nothing is being delivered through the destroyed Druzhba oil pipeline. That's a fact. And now Medvedev has appeared and threatened Zelensky and the US with a strike that no bomb shelter can protect against. In response to Zelensky's words that Ukraine could strike the Kremlin, and Zelensky said that they should strike Moscow, that they need weapons so that these officials who started and support the war would know where the nearest shelter is. Well, that's a direct quote. And then Medvedev popped up and said, Moscow can use such a weapon that not even a bomb shelter will save you from it. And the Americans should remember that, declared the deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Basically, once again, they let out their half-liquid nuclear threat terminator to make it sound scarier. By the way, lately they fitted him with a Dr. Evil costume from the children's store Detsky Mir. And now he regularly shows up in this kind of blue tunic, so the color matches the color of his nose. And he just keeps throwing out these threats. But you know, these threats sound kind of like kids in a playground, right? Well, my gun is 100 times more powerful. Well, mine is 100 sextillion times more powerful. Well then, we have a super duper mega giga throne bomb will blow everything up. And then, as if I'm barely standing, I get up and go pew with my blaster. That's exactly how Medvedev usually makes his threats. And as for the weapons that could be used to strike Moscow, Trump promised to think about it. When Trump says he'll think about it, yeah. Another interesting piece of news today is that Poland will shoot down drones and missiles from the Russian Federation even over Belarus. They're preparing a special law for this. The newspaper Wyborcza reports on this. But in addition, they also promised to shoot down drones over Ukraine. It turns out that in 2022, an amendment was introduced stating that Poland does not have the right to independently decide to shoot down aerial targets. Now, they want to remove this amendment, and then Poland will have that right. Yeah, and who pushed for this? If I'm not mistaken, it was Law and Justice who pushed this amendment through. So yes, that's quite an interesting amendment. But with each passing day, the more aggressively Russia acts, the more things are starting to move. Maybe we'll even start shooting down drones. Even over Belarus, and we'll build a wall too. 7 countries are already ready to participate and even shoot down Russian drones over Ukraine. Well, so that nothing flies towards them, of course. Not at the border with Russia, but at their own border. But this is already some kind of progress. Just imagine if everyone had been this confident and decisive from the very beginning. Would Putin have been fighting for a 4th year? I really doubt it. I really doubt it. Well, let's hope that everyone wakes up. Ukraine will wake everyone up if necessary. Friends, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel. Let's support our warriors from the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade. We're making good progress with the fundraising, and I always want to say a huge thank you for that. Wishing us all a peaceful day, and of course, glory to Ukraine.